Good morning and welcome to this morning's episode of the Amateur in the Morning. It is a cool Monday morning, finally, after a huge heat wave that hit Durban. I'm not really sure how the rest of the country is coping because I don't really watch the news or anything. But it's finally a cool morning here in Durban. Today is the 19th of October. And as usual on these sessions, I will be breaking down my view of the markets for the day, right? Let me just throw my little disclaimer in there as usual. As you know, I am not qualified to offer financial, investing, or trading advice. Everything I say on these sessions is purely just my own opinion on the markets. Any trades that I do take is trades I'm willing to take with cash that I'm willing to risk. So if you are taking any trades, if you are risking any of your cash, make sure that you do your own make sure that you do your own research and make sure that you do your own analysis as well so you can make more informed decisions on your side, right? So now that we've got the nitty-gritties out of the way, where I am going to be throwing in a new chart today that we haven't looked at before. And the reason for that is because it is playing out pretty nicely at the moment. And I am looking to add that since we're currently only looking at volatility 75, 50, and 10 from our old list. We're no longer looking at 100 or 25. And I will be throwing in volatility 25 1S and perhaps even volatility 51S in the coming week. Sorry about that. So let's get straight back into the charts. As you can see, I was just marking up my charts because I did actually clear my charts. I actually had a really bad week last week, so I was like, let me just get a fresh perspective on the markets this morning. So I was actually just sitting here and marking up my chart. So let's get straight into it. We're going to start with volatility 10. That's the first chart that I've got over here. And as you can see, I'm going to start from what day is it today? Today's the 19th. Okay. So I'm going to start with looking again at the weekly chart, right? Now, looking at the weekly chart, I have identified this little downward channel here that is playing out pretty well at the moment. And as you can see, we've got a second touch on either side. And we're looking to get a third touch at the bottom, right? But overall, what we can see on here is there is an opportunity for the market to come back and retest this level in here, right? So that is what we'll be looking to see, the market come back to retest this level in here before it does go down. So when you look at the weekly chart, you can see that there is an opportunity for the market to trade back up. Now I'm going to drop down to the daily chart. Looking at the daily chart, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so that we can see the full analysis. Looking at the daily chart, we can see that even on the daily chart itself, so if I were to drop that level in here that I just drew on the weekly, it would basically be this area in here. That would basically be the area that I just drew on the weekly chart, right? Now, looking at the daily chart, we can see that price does have the opportunity to continue trading a bit higher, right? As I have been speaking since around this area, actually since around here, I have been calling that price will come down to the downside and will push back up, right? So as long as you still remember that analysis, you will remember that we are still bullish on volatility 10, right? But looking at the daily chart today, sorry about that. Sorry. I don't know why he's disrespecting me today. Um, so looking at the daily chart today, let me just get this box out of the way. Looking at the daily chart today, I am looking at this specific area, that this zone that I've got highlighted in here, right? Let me just get my annotator. I am looking at this specific zone that I've got highlighted in here, right? To see if we can get a push to the downside, right? Overall, on the daily chart, I am anticipating that we might get a retest into the zone before we see this market pushing back to the upside. So basically, just follow the arrows, right? Now, looking at here, we can see that, yes, Saturday and Sunday's candles did reject from the zone really well, right? After we failed to get a candle close below the zone. So I will be I will be watching to see if price can respect this area and push further back to the downside, right? So for now, I'm not really looking to take any trades on this chart at the moment because I am anticipating that we'll get a push down to the downside and then perhaps from around here, I'll look to participate in the buyback to the upside, right? That can also go a bit deeper into this area, or it can even go back for another touch at the bottom of the zone. So if I do see good enough confirmations in here, then I will be looking to take a sell. and I'll be targeting basically this little zone that I've got in here, this gray zone that I've got highlighted. When we drop down to the H4 chart as well, you can see that area that I marked up on the H4 chart, which is basically here, right? Now, looking at this at the moment, the way price is playing out at this point, I will anticipate that it's most likely going to come back for another test at the top, right? Most likely going to come back up to around there, right? Before we see it pushing back to the downside and coming down to there, right? So that's what I would anticipate, right? Just looking at what price is currently doing at the moment. But just keep your mind open about the fact that we are expecting to see price push back to the downside. So I won't be looking to take part in the buy, but I'll most likely look to take part in the sell back to the downside. Another thing I can highlight on this chart is the fact that we've got this head and shoulders type of pattern that's currently playing out. So we're waiting for the right shoulder to sort of confirm. And once that's done, we'll look to take the sell back to the downside, right? Like I said, on the daily chart, we could see price even trade a bit deeper down into this area. So just be a bit more wary of the fact that that could happen, right? So we could see price come even further back down into this area before we see the pushback to the upside. But these are the areas that I am currently watching at the moment to see exactly what type of confirmations we can get in that area, in these areas that I have marked up. Let's move on to volatility 50. Looking at volatility 50, I haven't really marked up this chart as much as I would like to. So I'm just going to throw on a little bit more, a few more lines on here, just so I can make sense of a few of the other things. This should be light blue. No, sorry, sky. Right? So when I look at this weekly chart, let's start from the monthly again, right? Let's just look at the monthly, get a peek at the monthly. Now, I have looked at the monthly chart and I've basically identified this downward trend that's happening in here, right? As I mentioned, remember when I've been speaking about volatility 50, I have been saying that be wary that all we're doing on the daily chart is we're taking part in a retracement, right? So don't get too fixated on the fact that we're looking for buys. Be open-minded to the fact that the monthly and the weekly time frame are currently bearish at the moment. So when you see on here at the moment, you can see that price is still making lower highs. So I will be expecting to see it push down and go down to create a new lower low, right? So that is something that you need to be open-minded about. So looking at the weekly chart, we can see even on the weekly chart as well that we've got this bit of a channel. Oh, wow. Apologies for that. Let's just get this one, right? We've got this bit of a upward channel that is playing out here, right? I haven't really put a line on that side, but it is basically a channel at the moment, or you can even put a line on there if you'd like. It's purely based on how you do your analysis. But looking at this, you can see that the weekly is turning a bit more bearish than anything, right? So that is something that I am looking at the moment. So therefore, it would be much safer, even on the lower time frames, to look for more selling opportunities rather than buying opportunities, because we can see that price is currently sitting on this trend line with this week's candle currently opening on the outside of the trend line, right? And then it's sort of traded up a little bit and it's traded down. But after all, it is only Monday. And if this candle has opened in this way, we can expect it to even push up slightly more. And then we'll look at it pushing down a bit more as well, giving us a bit of a indecisive candlestick, right? So that is what I'm seeing on the higher time frames. When I look at the daily chart, I am still looking at possible buying opportunities off the bottom, right? But what I'm thinking is we could see this price just keep falling much lower. There is this bit of a fib setup that I have been looking at for quite a while that we can take advantage of. That price could possibly go back down into my money zone on my fib all the way down over here. If that does happen, then apologies for that. If that does happen, then I will be looking to participate in the buy from much lower. I did take a buy from here last week. From here, oh wow. Let me just get this other annotator, or let's just get this box. I did take a buy from here last week in this week in here, and I did take it up quite a bit right? But not as much as I would have liked to, because we do see that price failed to create a new higher high after hitting the significant level in here. As price failed to create a higher high, we would expect it to at least target these previous lows, or even this previous low over here, right? So overall, currently I am bearish on volatility 50 until we get some significant confirmations to keep going back to the upside, right? Let's just grab this from here to there. Not really clear as clean as I would like to see it, right? Higher high, higher low, lower high. Okay, so let's grab a trend line from here. Let's just change the color on that. And then we've got the lower low that formed in here, and we'll be anticipating something like this channel possibly playing out a bit more, right? So we'll be anticipating seeing this channel basically play out a bit more before we see price sort of turn around and go in the opposite direction. So I'll be expecting perhaps another touch on the upper trend line, or perhaps even pushing back down, because we've already got our second touch on here. So pushing back down to around this area in here. That would be a really good target for any sells as well, because we've got it tying in with around this area. So that is my outlook on volatility 50, right? Let's move on to VIX 75. I haven't really even looked at the chart on VIX 75. The reason for that is because I'm just not trading this chart at the moment, because I really don't like the way it's moving. So I'll just look at the weekly chart for you on volatility 75, and we can immediately identify this bit of a channel that's playing out in here. I'm actually going to clear this chart once I've basically done this with you guys. So I'm just going to do a rough analysis, right? So we've got this channel in here that's actually playing a very, very, very vital role. We've got this basically significant level as well that price has now broken below. So we'll be anticipating another touch on this trend line up in here, or this zone in here, to push price slightly a bit lower, possibly, right? Into around the significant level that we've got below here, which I have been speaking about for quite a while as well. So that is something just to be wary of on volatility 75. When I drop down to the daily chart, I'm just going to identify, oh, okay, so that's what this zone is. So I'm just going to move this a bit more to represent what we can see on here on the daily chart. Right, so that is this channel in here, and I have been speaking about this channel for a while now as well. That will be this touch in here, that will be this touch here, and you can see that this is a bit of a what's a bullish flag, a falling wedge, a pennant. I don't know, I really don't trade chart patterns, right? But I do know that this is sort of like a continuation pattern, right, that we should expect the market to continue, right? So we are looking at this specific level in here as a possible reversal zone for where we will see price bounce in on this area and push back to the upside. Looking at what's happening at the moment, however, the way price has basically pushed down and failed to create a new lower low below this area, I will anticipate that we'll see it touching into these areas first before we see it trade back to the downside again, right? So that's basically my outlook on what I see happening. I do see that I just missed a very good buying opportunity here as well. But it is going to basically go back into these areas here on the upside before continuing pushing back down again. What you can do is I would basically use my fib in here, and I would look to target around the 79%, which is up here. I've actually changed the labeling on my on my Fibonacci tool, but that's just based on the way I use it, right? So around the 79% up in here, that is where we can look to for a target for these buys that are currently happening at the moment. But perhaps we will get a bit of a bounce on the 50%, which is down here, pushing price back down into the money zone before we see that buys coming back up, right? So that is basically my outlook on volatility 75. Let's move over to 25-1S, which is an exciting new chart that I would like to share with you guys. And I have traded this over the weekend, and it's most likely it's actually just whooped my ass over the weekend, right? But overall, it is respecting the analysis at the moment because it is respecting the levels and so forth. It's just that I was basically taking trades against my analysis, right? Now, my analysis currently shows that I was anticipating that price will react from this level where it is currently sitting at the moment, right? So I was anticipating that price will react from this level. Now, I did have a zone that I had drawn in up in here, and that was identified on a lower time frame. And I have basically been expecting price to push back into that area, which it most likely will do, but not after it does a retest into the zone in here. So currently looking at 25.1S on the weekly chart, we will expect it to come back down into around that area there, right? So let's drop down to the daily chart, and I'm just going to pan out a bit on the daily chart. And you can see that on the daily chart, we've got this low that's been created in here, which price is now going to target. So any sells that are taken, we'll expect price to break below this low. Just going to change the color of this line so I know exactly what it is, right? So we're going to be targeting this low, and that works very, very well with a trend line retest in here, right? So that works really, really well with that. Another thing we've got in here is we've got the significant high or the significant consolidation that was now broken with an impulse to the upside. So we will expect a retest into here before we see a continuation back to the upside, right? That is something that I am looking at this moment currently on here, right? So that will basically form a bit of a channel here on the top, a bit of a channel here at the top, basically. Not really a very clean channel, but you know, this push down to the around here. Sorry, this push down to around here will form that push back to the upside, perhaps even break up here. Not really sure about that at this point. I'm not going to make any assumptions. I'm just going to wait to see when price gets back in here. If it does give good enough confirmations, then I'll look to take the sell back down, right? But according to my previous analysis and how things normally work, price should come back into around here, you know. But you know, this has basically burnt me over the weekend, so I don't want to make any aspersions at this point. I'm just going to look at targeting below this low in here for any sells that we can most likely get on lower time frame confirmations. Not much we can speak about on the H4 time frame, other than the fact that currently price is trading down, right? And we've got this bit of a zone in here. Let's just get this tool. We've got this bit of a zone in here where price will most likely look to do a retest before continuing back down, right? So that is something to look at the moment before we look at taking price back up to the upside. So for any sells off there, we'd be looking to target this zone down in here before we look at taking price back up to the upside again, or keep riding the trend back to the downside, because the overall higher time frames are calling for sells at the moment. Even if you look at the weekly time frame, it is calling for sells at the moment because it has tapped into my zone, and we'll just ride the sells back down, right? So that is basically my outlook on the charts for this morning. You know, not really much else I want to share. As I did mention a couple times last week, that I am going to include looking at a currency pair, looking at a metal, and perhaps looking at another indice. But for now, since I've just added 25.1S to our outlook, I'm most likely not going to do that this week. Perhaps we'll look at doing it maybe from the new month, but that's purely dependent on how these markets move, right? So for now, that is as much as I would like to share. However, I do share analysis every now and then on my Instagram page as well. So if you are looking for that, I do also share like before and after snapshots of trades that we do take and stuff like that. So you can just go check out my Instagram page. I'm not going to tell you to follow, not going to tell you to like anything. Remember, the only reason I do this is for educational purposes in itself, right? So your reactions as a result of anything you take from this really doesn't make a difference, to be quite honest, right? But if I can afford you the opportunity to learn from anything that we are doing, then I would love to seize that opportunity, you know? And it doesn't really take any effort from me because this is part of my daily operating rhythm in itself, right? So just check out my Instagram page if you are interested as well. It's at the_4 forex_amateur, right? So you can just check that out on there. And I do remember sharing a NASDAQ analysis on there over the weekend, or actually I shared it on Thursday, I think. And I think that played out really, really well because I did catch a selling opportunity on there. I actually did have a look at the chart as well, and I think it did sell very nicely as well. So you can feel free to go and check that out as well. So anyway, before I start, talking and talking forever, I'm just going to end it on that note, right? So until next time, it's been a pleasure as always to share, and I'm wishing you a blessed and a profitable trading day.